Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. Hello, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I'm your host, Nyomi Banks, and today we are diving in deeper into our series of Healing Beyond Betrayal. We're exploring how to reclaim your power and making power decisions after betrayal. So joining us today is the brilliant Mike Fick. He's a renowned author and coach who will share his innovative approach to decision-making, especially when it comes to navigating the complexities of divorce. But before we bring Mike up too, let's take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks here on the Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back. Hey, my beautiful souls, this is your girl, Goddess Nyomi Banks, and I am excited to share something special with you. Introducing my latest ebook workbook, Healing Beyond Betrayal, a journey of growth, empowerment, and renewal. In these 55 pages, I offer you insight, heartfelt stories, and practical worksheets designed to guide you on your healing journey. So if you experience betrayal or you are seeking personal growth, this resource is made just for you. You see, it's time to reclaim your power and embrace renewal. So you can get your copy by visiting the seasonofselflovepodcast.com. And as a thank you for being part of our community, use the code HEALED09 at checkout to enjoy a 15% discount. So let's embark on this journey together because you deserve to heal, grow, and thrive.
Are you ready to transform your pain into power? Join us this September for the 30-day Healing Beyond Betrayal Challenge. From Hurt to Hope. Starting September 1st, embark on a journey of healing and self-discovery. Each day, you'll receive empowering lessons, practical exercises, and supportive community connections, designed to help you overcome the hurt of betrayal and reclaim your joy. Don't let betrayal define your story. It's time to rise, heal, and rebuild a brighter future. Sign up today at the seasonofselflovepodcast.com.
All right, well, welcome back to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and today we're going deeper into our series topic this month is about healing beyond betrayal. Today we are talking to Michael Fick about decoding clarity and empowered decisions after betrayal. Mr. Fink, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Nyomi, I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm excited. What stood out to me most of all is that your dedication to women understanding, or your understanding of women more, to help us more, coming from a man point of view. So I love that aspect of it. And I think it'd be quite fitting for our series this month. But before we get really into it, what I want to do is I want to just start off with a nice grounded meditation before we start. All right. So my listeners, if you all can get comfortable at this moment and at this time, and please close your eyes. Find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down. And gently close your eyes. Now I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. And I want you to hold it for a moment. Now exhale slowly through your mouth, letting go of any tension or stress. want you to imagine a warm and soothing light surrounding you. With this light represents love, acceptance, and strength. Allow this light to develop you, fill your heart with peace and resilience. And with each inhale, draw in positivity. And with each exhale, release doubt. I want you to hold on to this feeling of empowerment as we explore today's topic. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes and return to the present moment. All right, my beautiful people, thank you for joining me in that moment for reflection. And if you're new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, it's something that we do every day, Monday through Friday, is that we do a nice guided meditation just to get us prepared for the topic in hand. And I am so excited for this. So Mike, your journey has taken you across the continents, more continents than we can even imagine. So shaping a very unique perspective of personal development. So could you share with us what was the pivotal experiences that led you to create the Decoding Grid?
That's a great question. So I've been in the field of personal development for 2.5 decades. I have a master's in psychology from Yale, all good and nice. But really, it's only when you live through your own experiences that your wounds can become your gift, right? Mm-hmm. So in the first part of my careers, I was helping people achieve goals through programs I created. And then at some point, I got into a business relationship that was a 50-50 business relationship. And the first 5 years were great, but the following 5 years were absolutely hell, because all of a sudden we started seeing things differently. The business had to change. We had to reinvent ourselves. And it became very, very clear that we had different values, that we were going into different directions, that what we thought was best in terms of our vision for the future and our clients was completely different.
Yeah.
And this is where the struggle began. We were arguing more and more often, screaming at each other. And that's when I realized that I had become trapped in a situation that was not so much that I was unhappy in my relationship, but that the problem that I was facing most was the indecision about what to do with my relationship, even though it was a business relationship. Is it my fault? Is it his fault? Am I right? Is he wrong? Is he right? Am I wrong? What if I decide to leave the relationship and then I have to start from scratch? I would have to buy him out. There were all these unknowns. And I was so afraid. I was so anxious. I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't sleep. I burned out. My quality of life was horrible. And what I discovered and through my own experience is that indecision is actually incredibly debilitating. And I wouldn't have not understood it if I hadn't experienced it. It can affect your mental focus, your sleep, your energy levels, your mental health, your emotions, your eating habits, your exercising habits, even your relationship, your social interactions, or if you have kids, even your relationship with your kids, because you are not able to be fully present and engaged with them, because in the back of your mind, there's always those wheels turning. It's like, should I stay? Should I go? Am I doing the right thing? And our brain craves closure, and when it cannot have it, it gets on overdrive, and I almost burned out. So that was kind of the beginning of the pain. But then it became so bad, and it happened also at the same time when I hit my 50th birthday, when I did a life review. And that's when I looked at the decisions that I had made in my life previously, and thankfully I had developed a process that helped me make good decisions. But for some reason, I did not apply that process to deciding really fully whether I should get into that 50-50 relationship, which was almost a marriage, not a relationship couple's marriage, but it was a business marriage. And when I decided to finally apply my own medicine, I went from being anxious, confused, burned out to, now I know. I had my head aligned with my heart, aligned with my gut. It became so clear that in terms of what I had to do. And suddenly I could face all the challenges, all the difficulties of the separation, of buying him out, of having to start from scratch, of having to sell an asset, and of being financially depleted. But I just knew it was the right thing. And at that point, I thought, this is interesting. I went from 5 years of pain and misery to feeling good, knowing that I can figure things out. And it wasn't betrayal in the direct sense that, he had an affair with another person, but in a way, I felt betrayed because I thought we had shared a set of values and it didn't pan out.
Yeah.
And that clarity finally allowed me to move forward. And when I discovered that, when I had that experience, I said, okay, I have healed myself, but can I help others? Mm-hmm. And then my brother-in-law was going through some very difficult times in terms of indecision. He had to make some very difficult decisions regarding his career as a doctor. He had been stuck in indecision for 2 years. He had anxiety, nausea. He felt like vomiting all the time when he was thinking about it. And I thought, let me try. So I did a session with him. I applied my process. And in 2 hours, he went from confusion and anxiety to clarity and certainty. Mm-hmm. And he told me, wow, it was like I had been stuck in a pitch dark room, bumping myself against the furniture. And then he turned on the light and now I can see and I can move freely, right? Mm-hmm. So I realized the power of clarity to give you certainty so that you can move beyond betrayal, you can move beyond indecision, and you can create a better future. Does that make sense, Nyomi?
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of times with me that I sometimes get that blockage and not understanding what that blockage is. Once you go through this self-love, this healing process, and you think you've gotten through, and then all of a sudden, whoop, here comes something, and you're like, well, okay, I thought I got through that. And then it's something else, And so I totally understand where that blockage come from. And when you spoke about your partnership, how that first 5 years was great, but what I've learned, especially when you're in a relationship with anybody, is that as you grow, you both grow differently. So what your values were started off with, sometimes it's not always like that. It's the funny thing that we talk about all the time about showing up as a representative, just to be in a relationship with someone, whether it's a dating relationship or a partnership or relationship. Sometimes, and we figure when we get into that relationship, we can change, or hopefully they will come on my side and, like that, from there. So when you were saying about the sense of betrayal, I kind of felt that. I kind of felt that in a way that, going in, being excited about this, about this project, about what you're doing. And then as the company is growing and everything is happening, and then you see that person kind of moving away, and I'm going to say this, I see a sense of two betrayals. One is you like, I really should leave this, and not knowing and being undecisive of what you're doing. And that's as a sense of betraying of yourself. But then also like, man, I thought this is what we had together. I thought we were on the same wavelength, together for that. So I totally understand everything that you were saying right there. But my thing is, how can we get through it? What are the tools? How are we getting through that?
That's a great question. Now, I'm going to give you some specific tools because then I decided to help women considering divorce who were stuck in indecision for years, sometimes decades, because they were afraid of making a mistake they would regret. And this is key. I'm going to talk about that more. So I developed that process to help them make clarity and certainty. And now in 30 days or less, I can actually help them because I'm going to share the exact same tools that I guide them through. But the first thing you need to understand, Nyomi, is that when people are stuck, whether it's because they were betrayed or because they're not sure what to do, there is a biological programming in their brain that stops them from taking action, that keeps them stuck in the status quo. So I have here a little model of the brain for the people who are just listening to the podcast. You can imagine the brain as a cone of ice cream with 3 scoops of ice cream on top of it, right?
Okay.
And the first scoop is what is called the primal brain. The second one is the emotional brain, and the last one is the rational brain. And this primal brain is important because it's the part of our brain in charge of our survival. Mm-hmm. And think about a decision such as divorce, or whether it's, should I break the relationship, which is a business partnership, or any decision that has a very high cost of failure. In the case of divorce or moving on, it affects you and other people, your kids, your spouse, your family, maybe your friends. It affects you on many different fronts: psychological, emotional, financial, professional, social. And it affects you for many years to come, or even the rest of your life.
Yeah.
On top of that, it's a decision that is pretty much irreversible. Once you pull the trigger, it's hard to come back, right? So it's a very high stakes. And unless you have absolute certainty that it's the right decision, your brain will say, hey, hold your horses. When in doubt, wait it out. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Because even though your situation might be miserable, at least your brain knows that you've been able to cope with it. You're still alive. But the unknown, it could be way worse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you get over that kind of status quo, that paralysis? The answer, the antidote to the indecision and paralysis is certainty. And the way to get certainty is by having clarity. Now, I'll give you some examples. You talk about the betrayal, and there are two ways to get over betrayal. Number one is, if I felt betrayed, am I in a position to actually move on? And then step number two, how can I best move on so I don't repeat the same mistakes from the past, or I create a better future so that I can make sure that the grass will be greener on the other side. And in order for you to have that certainty, you need to have clarity, because for some people in their relationship, there are what I call instant deal breakers. That means that something happened and they were done. Maybe it was that their spouse cheated, or maybe it was that he went gambling and lost, the kids' money for their college at the casino, or maybe they started doing drugs, or maybe they became physically abusive. Something so powerful happened that one thing was, you know what? That's it. I'm done. Now, you are betrayed, but in a way you can move to that step forward from that step one of betrayal, because you have that certainty. Unfortunately, a lot of women considering divorce don't have that certainty. A lot of them tell me, you know what, Mike? I wish my husband or my spouse was a jerk. And what they're really saying is that I wish he was such a bad person, because in that sense, I would know exactly with certainty what to do. But when that spouse is not a monster, that's when you are caught into, well, who knows? Maybe things can improve. Well, who knows? Things can change. And hope is almost infinite, right? Unfortunately, that's not a strategy. And as long as you don't make a decision, technically speaking, you haven't made a mistake. But when you pull the trigger, especially because in a situation like a relationship, things usually get worse before they get better, right? Like if you think about renovating a bathroom, you have to tear it down before you can rebuild it as a more beautiful bathroom.
Yeah.
And the consequences are so heavy that if you make a decision, that's when you put yourself in a position to face the consequences, to blame yourself, to be blamed by your kids, by your spouse, by other people. Whereas if you kind of say, I'm still thinking about it, and stay stuck in the status quo, technically speaking, you haven't made a mistake. Technically speaking, you can keep going and at least have the hope that things will get better. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let me give you the piece, and I can get quite passionate. So if you think there's a part where you want to step in, please feel free to do that.
I sure will.
So the first thing is to understand how can we get clarity? And the first step is to get all the pieces of the puzzle. Imagine having a jigsaw puzzle, and you only have 200 pieces out of 1,000 pieces. How likely are you going to be to figure out the big picture?
Not at all.
Not at all, right? Okay. And it's the same thing, is that usually people do not consider all the things that are important to them in a relationship. I remember this client. Her name was Felicia. Her husband betrayed her. She found that he had been cheating on her even when she was pregnant. And it happened several times throughout the relationship. And then he came to her and said, no, I'm so sorry. It's not going to happen again. He went to a sex addiction support group, supposedly to get better. But in spite of that, she found out he had cheated again. She was devastated, as you can imagine. But at the same time, they had a son. And she kept thinking, yes, I can't take this anymore. He has cheated on me, but he's such a great dad. And her mind was focused only on these two big things: Great, great dad, terrible husband.
Husband.
And she was not considering all the pieces of the puzzle. And this happens especially when there is one aspect in the relationship of your spouse that is extreme. I call this being blinded by the intense. Maybe your spouse is a fantastic provider or fantastic lover or has a great sense of humor. There's one quality that stands out so big that you think, wow, you forget about the rest. Now, Nyomi, whenever you think about a relationship, the reality is that there are some things that are important to you in a partner. Maybe you want someone who has a great sense of humor. Maybe you want someone who is physically affectionate, who is a good communicator or a great listener, or who loves traveling, or who likes hard rock music, whatever that is. It's specific to you. But when you start digging deep and really taking the time to understand what are your needs, what is it that you want, what is it that you value, not what society tells you, but what you truly value, it turns out that most people have between 20 to 30 things that are important to them. And if that sounds a lot to people who are listening, it's a sure sign that they're not considering all the pieces of the variable. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So first step is you have to understand all the things that are important to you, not to what society tells you you should feel, not to what is important to your friends and family, but to you as a person. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's nothing that is too small or too big. It is what it is. You know, I tell my clients, you trying to feel differently about something because you should feel differently is as ridiculous as me telling you, you have brown eyes. You know, you should have green eyes. But that doesn't make sense. That's why.
Right.
No. You should. Doesn't make sense. It's so obvious in this context. Or if you like sushi, somebody telling you, you should not like sushi. Sushi is not good food. Or vice versa. You don't like sushi. They say you should like sushi. Well, your values represent who you are. It's your identity. Nobody's like you. So you need to be really aware that it's okay to feel what you feel. Now, the next step is to take the things that are important to you and make sense of them. So I have here 2 Rubik cubes. So for the people who are just listening, one Rubik cube is completely jumbled. All the colors are mixed, and the other one is solved. But the interesting thing, Nyomi, to consider is that even though the jumbled Rubik cube has all the colors, completely jumbled, if you think about it, are there any pieces missing? Are there any color stickers or smaller cubes missing compared to the other cube?
No,
they're all there, right?
All there.
So all the necessary pieces to solve the cube are there. The only thing missing is turning them and placing them in the right sequence, right?
Yes.
So all the pieces are there. We all have inside of us when we take the time to look inside the pieces to understand what we really want and how we can create a better future and move beyond betrayal. We just need to order them in the proper sequence. So how do we do this? The next step is what I call creating order from chaos. This is really where you start ranking the things that are important to you from the most important one to the least important one. Because if you don't know what's more important versus least important, then you are stuck in this endless loop of pros and cons.
Yeah.
Amazing dad, bad husband, this and not that. But when you start creating a hierarchy, that's when you can make decisions. And I'm going to give you an example. Because at the base, the way we make decisions as a human being is we have a set of values, a set of things that are important to us that we try to fulfill consciously or unconsciously. So let me give you this example. Has it ever happened to you to go to the restaurant and you look at the menu, you want to order some food, and you don't know what to order? You're like, this or that, and I'm not sure. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So this is quite a common experience. And the reality is that for most people, it's because there are a number of things that is important to them in what they want when they order food, but not all of them are fulfilled.
Yeah.
The 3 most common are, let's say people want something that is tasty, yum, yum, that is healthy, and that is reasonably priced. And if you have something like that on the menu, it's like, go, go, go. It's a no-brainer. If there's nothing like that, everything is expensive, doesn't taste good, and is not healthy, it's a no, no, no. But the problem is when you have something that is one, but not the other. It becomes the yes, but. Oh, it's tasty. Yeah, but it's not really healthy. Wow, this is healthy and tasty. Yeah, but have you seen the price?
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when you become aware of the things that you are trying to juggle in your mind, and also when you become aware of, okay, at the end of the day, what do I value more? Is it taste? Is it health? Or is it price? And you will make a very different choice. If you want tasty, you
Based on
may
that,
make a
right?
burger. If you want healthy, maybe the salmon. If you want cheap, maybe the pizza, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we make decisions. And we get confused even with just 3 values because we cannot process those things in our mind. Imagine when you have 20 to 30 values. So you need to take the time to put them in writing, to define what every single value means to you, to as much possible detail as possible, so that you know, or anybody else would know without a shred of a doubt, whether that value is being fulfilled. For example, physically affectionate. What does having a partner who's physically affectionate mean to you, Nyomi, for example?
For me, say that again.
Yeah, what if you were to tell me, somebody who is physically affectionate, that's something that's important to me. How would you define physically affectionate? I don't know if that's true for you, but how would you define it?
Well, for me, it would find is just being in my space, being right here where I can feel that energy. A gentle hand, holding my hand, or a hug, just a hug, like that. Just really is really being in my present, and being in my present. We could just both sit in a room. He could be doing one thing, I could be doing another. But if we're sitting in there and we're there together, that's good for me. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's such a great example. And what you did 2 things. The first one is him being in my presence, and that's one way, but that's only one way that you can feel it. And then what you did is you used something that were more like you used to work in the movies, right? So imagine being a Hollywood director and you make the scene where people should know that this is a person who is physically affectionate. And that's when you describe, we are in the same room. He has my hand on me. He gives me hugs. So the more you can describe it in the sense of what you see, what the other person is doing, who is where doing what, the more you'll have a precision in terms of knowing whether that person fulfills the value or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So you gather all the pieces, then you try to make some order and you organize them from the most important one to the least important one, because otherwise you don't know what is essential versus optional. You don't know what are the things that you can compromise on versus the ones that are must-haves. So here's another example. Let's say that you are looking for your dream house and there are 20 things that you're looking in this house. And one day a friend of yours comes and says, Nyomi, I found your dream house. It has 19 things out of 20 that you're looking for. That's 95%. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
So you know what? For me, it's a good thing because it's 95% of it. And I am the type of person that whatever that 5% not, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to create it myself. Yes.
Okay, I love your answer. I love your answer. Now, let me ask you this. Let's see what comes out. This was not rehearsed. We're going to discuss this. What if the one thing missing, Nyomi, is that the house is located in a different city and state than where you want to live?
Okay, that's different.
Aha.
That's different. First of all, I wouldn't even be in the city or the state that I'm just saying. I wouldn't even be there looking. You understand what I'm saying? So I wouldn't even go there to look. So can we give another one? Because I wouldn't.
I know I kind of tricked you. I know, but thank you for playing along. But the point is that, if a person comes and says, yeah, 95%, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter so much what are the things that are, it's not the what is, it's not how many things are fulfilled, it's which ones. Because one thing, if it's the number one most important thing, if it's not fulfilled, everything else becomes a moot point. So I realize this is an extreme example, but the reality is that you can have that clarity and make powerful decisions only when you know what are my top values, what are my bottom values, what are my essential values, because then this is what allows you to assess your relationship for real.
Yeah.
And both in terms of if you are stuck in a relationship and you want to move past that relationship, as well as let's say that the next step has come and you are dating, you are moving beyond betrayal, you are trying to meet new people, understanding that if you have a person in front of you and you see that some things are fulfilled but not others, the most important thing you can have is clarity. What is it that's missing? Because I remember this client, her name was Kate. She had been struggling for 5 long years in terms of, should I stay? Should I go? Her husband was not a monster. And that's why she was stuck in indecision. And when we took the things that were important to her, it turned out that she had 14 things out of 26 that were essential to her. The problem was that her husband did not fulfill 4 out of the top 5. So even though he had 70% of things that she wanted in a relationship, quote unquote, on paper, he had a lot of things going on for him. Unfortunately, the most important ones were not fulfilled. And that's when she was able to finally understand why she had been unhappy, to put her emotions into words, and to make a decision that, you know what, those things are so powerful, and there were a few others that he would have to make changes on, that in reality, expecting him to change, to make significant changes on those 5 or 7 areas would have been unrealistic. He would have needed a personality transplant, right? So that's when she had the certainty, okay, you know what? Yeah, he's not a bad person. It's not that he's a bad husband. It's just we're not a good fit because the things that are most important to me are not being fulfilled. And that's how she was able to move forward. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have a question for you.
Yes.
For speaking of your client, this recent one right here, is that out of the 14, was it out of the 14? I want to make sure that
remember out of the 14 essential ones.
The essential, that's out of the top 5, 4 of them, the husband or the mate did not qualify for. So I guess this is my question. With her looking for those values or those things into that other person herself, does she have that herself to seek? Does that make sense? Does she have that within herself to not look at it from someone else, so it wouldn't be a make it or break it situation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know what? That's such a great comment. And actually, that's quite an advanced comment, because one of the things that the first thing is to have a complete picture of the state of your relationship. And then you see, okay, I know that my essentials need to be fulfilled for me to be happy, but it doesn't mean that your husband has to do all the work. Maybe there are some things that you can fulfill differently that doesn't require your husband or your spouse to fulfill them. Ideally, you would want to have your spouse do that, but maybe there are other ways. And that reminds me of the example of Tracy. So Tracy was a storyteller. Every day she would come home and she would start, telling what happened to her husband, and wanting to share all the details. There was one problem though. Her husband had ADHD. He could not focus long enough to listen to her. So even if he had wanted, that was a no-go. And obviously that was a problem for her, because having a good listener was top 2 on her list. But you made a very powerful comment. In this specific instance, I guided her and I said, well, is there a way so that you can have this value fulfilled sufficiently outside of your relationship? I call this outsourcing.
Okay.
And she said, you know what, maybe. And what she started doing was organizing lunches with her very best friends 3 times a week, where they would get together, and her friends were just great listeners, and she would get her listening cup need filled enough so that when she would come home, she would not have to have her husband listen to her. So that was one workaround, which was powerful enough for her to see, okay, this I can take care of myself, and the others. So this is not something that I should focus on to try my husband to make changes, because that one I can take care through outsourcing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does.
I'll give you another one, which is that was Stacy, if my memory is correct. Obviously, I'm using fake names to protect their privacy, but
no, I understand.
So she had a husband, and he was very, very messy. And she was always like, oh man, he left the dishes, 3 days of dishes in the sink. He would drop just her clothes on the floor instead of putting them in the laundry bag. And she was like fed up, and she would just go at him and nag him like, clean after yourself, put your things, be tidy. But she realized two things when I helped her order her values and to understand what was essential versus optional. It turned out that having a spouse that was tidy was value number 21 out of 22. It was like not only optional, but it was the second to last. And when she saw that, she was like blown away. It's like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much time and effort on focusing on something that is not even relevant. So it's not essential to me. And I can also take care of me, because what I really care about at the end of the day is not that he is tidy. Yes, I would love that. But what I really care at the end of the day is to have a tidy house. And you know what? I can tidy. I'll wash the dishes. I'll clean I'll take the clothes on the floor. Yeah. And in exchange, he can do something other things for me.
Right.
So that's another way. I call that insourcing. The first one is outsourcing. This one is insourcing. So that these are some ways that you can kind of find workarounds. But at the end of the day, there's only so many that you can work on this way. So there is a possibility, but it depends. It really is case by case, and you have to understand really what are the points that are most painful to you because they're not fulfilled and they're essential versus the ones that are optional. Does that make more sense now?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I kind of followed you along with it all the way too. So I definitely understand. So it's more of, you said it once, you said by prioritizing what your values are from there. So her tidiness was number 21, but it was like an irritation for her, more. So yes. Now what you're doing is this teaching how to manage those things of what's really important to you. Is that really a strong, how can you do it? And you have those two different forms from outsourcing to insourcing to kind of help that along the way, because you already know before you say I do that he wasn't tidy. You already knew before you got married that he wasn't a good listener, but you made that conscious decision to say I do. So now my question is to you, why did you say I do when knowing that, so where in that question that I have for them, what answers would you have from your clients when asking that question? Because it's somewhere you made a decision knowing that, and I understand you said what's more important to you, knowing. So you already know going in that, all right, there is a possibility, a 50-50 chance that this man is not going to listen to me because he has ADHD. And I know this man is not, he's messy because I've been to his apartment and I know how it is. So what, as a woman or even a person, period, that once you say I do, is going to change?
That's such a great question. And that opens up another whole topic and area, which is, people who have cold feet, because in a way, maybe, so there are so many reasons, because I also help women who are like, not sure, should I marry or not, or women who had divorced and who told me, right from the get-go, I had a feeling that maybe it wasn't right. Yeah. But I remember having this client, she saw that her parents had always been unhappy. So for her, it was normal to be in a relationship where it's okay to be unhappy. That was the role model that she had, and she didn't know better. Another one was that there was so much societal pressure, either because their friends were getting married or the family, or even sometimes it was religious. Like I remember this person who told me, they went to see this religious figure. I don't know if it was a pastor. And he said, so are you really loving each other and ready to spend eternity together? Something along those lines. And it was such a big question, but the pressure to say yes was so big that you don't know what else to say. Yeah. And again, it goes back, think about this. It goes back to the beginning in terms of if you have some doubts about the marriage, but you're not sure, it's the status quo. If you pull the plug, you're going to have to face consequences. And if you don't have certainty, then you say, who knows? And hope, we have an amazing ability for denial and hope. Yeah. So you think, so why, there is more than one answer about for the question, why do people say yes even if they know? So maybe she knew he was messy, but maybe at the time she was blinded by other things that she had not paid, so that they were more, maybe he was a great lover, or maybe they have that love of animals in common that she thought the other thing wouldn't matter. Yeah. Or maybe she thought, I can change him. I'm sure that this is a thought that people have.
Yeah.
And but the reality, to make a long story short, is it's because people do not have clarity in terms of what's important to them. Because if you know from the get-go, you know what? I really want a person who's a great listener. And even though he's so great in other areas of the relationship, that's not going to do it for me. If you have that clarity beforehand, then you can also have the certainty to not say I do. But we are so confused with our emotions. How much more time do you have, Nyomi? Because I'm so passionate, I have lots of things to share.
We don't have to have a part two.
Okay. So, there's a thing which is, at the end of the day, we're not very good at human beings at understanding our emotions. I'm going to give you a couple of studies that I found really, really funny. So the first one is they had male students meet a woman in the middle of a suspended bridge that was almost 300 feet high, and the bridge was shaky. It was made of, those wooden planks with ropes. So it was very fear-inducing. And they would meet this woman in the middle of the bridge. They would have the woman would have them fill out a questionnaire, and at the end, she would give them her phone number, saying, "If you have questions about the study, call me." And then they did the exact same study, but on the bridge, it was very similar, but it was very, very low. It was just maybe 3 feet high, no danger whatsoever. And what came up was that there were many more men who ended up calling the woman who were the men who had been on the shaky high bridge. Do you have any, what's your guess? What do you think more men called the woman when they went and met her on the high, quote unquote, dangerous bridge versus the lower one?
Because they figured that that's more the lower one. And you said the lower one was shaky, right? I just want to make sure that was here.
Oh, no, sorry. Let me make it clearer. So the one that was at 300 feet was shaky, but it was at 300 feet. So if you look down, it's scary. The other one was shaky too, but if you look down, it's just 3 feet high.
And they went to the one that was the highest?
So the ones who crossed the high bridge ended up calling the woman much more often than the ones who just met the woman on a lower bridge.
Well, first, the one on the highest, that gave, and I'm just speaking, I believe that it gave them more of a higher self-esteem, that I was able to make it here versus than making it here, that I put more effort in going upwards. So that's more intel of who I am moving forward. That's what I see. Yeah.
That's a great question. That's a great answer, and I hear that a lot. At the same time, they could just feel high self-esteem without necessarily having to call the woman. They could just feel great about themselves. So it turns out, but I like your answer because it really shows that you thought about it. At the end of the day, what happened is that the men who went on the bridge that was elevated, that was fear-inducing, they felt physiological arousal. And their brain misinterpreted, I feel emotional when I'm in front of this woman. It must mean that I'm attracted to her or romantically attracted, right? So they misattributed a physical sensation to something else. So we feel things, and then we try to make sense from the environment, and that was the most obvious thing. Now, let me give you a second experiment. They were giving people either very cold beverages or warm beverages, and then they had them read about another person, the profile of another person. And it turned out that the people who were holding cold beverages in their hands were rating this other person profile. That they were saying that the person I'm reading about, she's colder, she's not as emotional. And the people who had warm beverages in their hand were saying, "Oh, this is a wonderful person. She's so nice and emotional." Obviously, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but the fact is that we're not very good at understanding our emotions. And in fact, if you go back to the example of Stacy, when she had the husband who was messy, she thought he was the cause of the unhappiness of the relationship because there were other issues going on in the relationship. But what was the most obvious thing that she could see with her eyes? The clothes on the floor, the dish, and the sink.
Yeah.
Sorry, the dish and the sink.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Most definitely. Definitely it does.
So we are not very good at understanding our emotions. We don't have clarity. So that's why taking the time to really dig deep in terms of what it is that is important to me. How do I know it's being fulfilled? And really having all the pieces of the puzzle and putting them in order, that's what gives you the power to make a powerful decision. And not only to decide to say, I do, but also to kind of create a better future. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And you know what? One thing is that I didn't know that this was going to be a really good show. Well, I knew it was going to be a good show, but I didn't know that we were going to have part 2.
Okay. I'd love to be back on this show because I have some very, I'm going to give you a teaser.
Yeah.
The brain is going to come back into play. And, this is going to just blow your mind once you understand how you can get really clarity, because there's a difference, Nyomi. So now this is teaser for part 2. Listeners, make sure to come back to part 2. There's a difference between knowing what to do and the way you feel about it.
Yeah.
You can know something logically, but emotionally, it's a totally different ball game. I have so many women. It's like, my therapist tells me I should divorce, but I'm not sure. My marriage counselor thinks I should divorce, but I'm not sure. First of all, it may be based on other people's values. But even when they know logically, it's like, it's not the same thing. And in the next episode, one of the questions I'm going to answer is, does that ever happen to you to watch a movie where you know logically that it has a happy ending? Let's take The Notebook. You know that Noah and Ali, they will just end up together. It will be a beautiful love story. They will kiss.
Still talking about it.
But while you watch the movie, you're having the struggles, you're having the pains. You feel like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Why is that? Why do we know something logically and yet emotionally it's a different ballgame? Well, the answer will be in the next episode.
I love that. Thank you for that one, Mike. And as you were talking, I said, oh my God, he will be great for our next series. And it goes right on top, right on that. We're talking about balancing your life and trying to figure that out on what life looks like balancing for you. So that'll be a great idea. We're going to have to do this again oh my God, yes. To do this again. So any last words for my listeners right now? As I said, we're talking about Healing Beyond Betrayal in this month's series. So if you had any last words to give my listeners, what would it be?
So let me make a quick summary. The first thing is you have to understand that you have your brain, your biology that is set against you because it wants to protect you, it wants to keep the status quo. The next step is to gather all the pieces of the puzzle so that you can really make a decision properly. Then it's to understand what's more important versus less important, essential versus optional. Then there's one more step that we're going to talk in part 2. And I will say that if people are really, really curious, I have written a book. It's called Divorce Decision Decoded. People can go on getabsoluteClarity.com. You want to getabsoluteClarity.com. You can get the book. You can understand how to apply the process. But really, those are the first steps. And on the next episode, this is where we're going to kind of come with this super new perspective that is really mind-blowing, that will make a lot of sense when you actually learn it. And yet nobody's using it. So another teaser for the next episode. Yeah,
beautiful. All right. So look, when Mike talking, he's not talking about the episode for tomorrow. He's talking about the next episode that him and I will be involved in. I think it's going to be amazing. I know it. I know it's going to be amazing for that. Again, Mike, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited already. I'm excited already. It's just heightening even more. Really, it is. To my listeners, I want to thank you so much for continuing to join us here on the Season of Self-Love. I keep tuning in. Keep tuning in. I told you we got y'all this month. And as you see, I'm going to have you next month too, because I'm going to have Mike back. So again, I want you to remember that every step that you take is a part of your self-love journey. Take it one day at a time. Be patient with yourself, all right? Have a good one. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today and remember, You are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.